Hello, my name is Starla Henderson with Runner House Quilts, and today we are going to work on, I'm going to show you how I remove papers from behind my quilts, from behind my appliques on my quilts. The first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to cut out the back. After you have appliqued your piece down, whatever it is, in this case it's a vase, you're going to then trim out with, a rough 1/4 inch all the way around the piece. And it's kind of hard to see because I put this on white fabric and it's white paper. When you've trimmed that out, and what I like to do with hand applique, you're holding it in your hands and you're manipulating it with your hands. And so if you've got these papers in, especially if it's a very big block, it can get a little awkward and a little clumsy trying to squish those papers. So for several reasons, I have started I would applique this down and then I will trim it out and go ahead and remove it. And I do that with each thing as I applique it because it makes it easier to handle, and also just getting one thing wet at a time seems to work better when it comes to the drying. So what you're going to do is you're going to wet it really good. And I've been using it's like what I use for starch, because I can get it right on that seam allowance, really get it wet. And then you're going to have to let it sit for a little bit, because that's got to really soak in. And sometimes I'll even go in and do it right up underneath this where it's right where it was glued, because you're trying to loosen that glue so you can let it get out. Let it pull it out. So I'm going to leave that sit for a minute. Okay. Usually, depending upon the piece, it needs to sit about 10 or 15 minutes. But you can start seeing, you can pull it up, and if it's starting to pull away, then you're good. So you also need to get your iron hot, because as soon as you pull this paper out, you're going to iron it dry, because you do not want this to run. You don't want your fabric to run, which is why I will do this one at a time, because then I can get them out one at a time. See, and I'm just pulling this back. It's also important when you're appliquing this down, just like any other piece, you want to make sure that you are making tiny stitches, because this is a really tight little place in here. And if you're not careful as you're pulling these out, if you don't have tiny stitches, you're going to have a problem. You may pull your seam out. See, it just comes right out. And I just go through and keep pulling this up with my fingers all the way around, just like that, and get it pulled up out of the way. And then I just peel this out, just like that. And this will work, of course, when you've got flowers that have little bitty places and leaves, you're going to have to really dampen those corners, make sure they soak all the way through, so that it'll pull out really quick, really easily. And you may even, that's where you may have caught some of your paper, and so you're going to have to be gentle as you pull it. This one, I actually didn't catch it, so it came out really easy, but that's not always the case. So if it starts pulling, just gently dampen the paper a little bit more so that it will go ahead and loosen. That paper will moisten, and it'll be easier to get it out. And then you're gonna dry it. As soon as you get that paper out, you make sure that you've kept your shape, because sometimes with those points, if you're not careful, you might pull that point out of shape, but you can always reshape it. And you're just going to dry this just like that. And sometimes I'll dry it from the back too, because you want that seam to lay flat back here that you have just disturbed whenever you lifted it all up. And I'll just flip it back and forth until it's all completely dried. And that's how you take the papers out. It's really very easy. The thing I really do different is I do it one at a time. And if I'm working on a block with a lot of different applique pieces in it, I finish this flower, I go ahead and trim it out and remove the papers then and dry it. And that way I don't leave any one place sitting too long wet. It just seems to work better for me, and it's also easier to handle the block while I'm appliquing the rest of it if I'm not struggling with all of the paper in there the whole time. But that's how you do it. That's how I remove my papers. This is Starla Henderson with Fronter House Quilts, and we've been working on our summer sampler. Thank you for joining me. Please be sure and look me up on Facebook and on YouTube. Thank you.